Boko Haram, Kanuri, Boko Haram.
Just like the Bodom of Chad, the Boko Haram conflict has thrust the Kanuri people as an ethnic group into the limelight of the national and international community due to the predominance of the Kanuri within the leadership or shura of Boko Haram. But what is the history of the Kanuri people of Cameroon?
The Kanuri are an African people comprised of about 7 to 8 million people spread across Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. In addition to the Kanuri living within the aforementioned countries, there is a large Kanuri diaspora in countries such as Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Gabon, Central African Republic, and Congo. So, if you add the Kanuri found in the ancient Kanem-Borno Empire to those found in the diaspora, you would have not less than 8 to 9 million Kanuri spread across different countries in the world.
The history of the settlement of the Kanuri people is not well known by Cameroonians, and the fact that this ethnic group is associated with Boko Haram has reinforced the stigmatization of Kanuri.
The settlement of the Kanuri within the Lake Chad Basin dates back to the 17th century. According to exogenous sources, such as Arab explorers in the Middle Age, sources such as European travelers and explorers, as well as indigenous sources. And here, I am referring to documentation on the history of the Kanuri people from the Kanem-Borno Ulema, or body of Muslim scholars, notably chronicles written by Imam Ahmad ibn Fatua, the ancient Imam of the Grand Mosque of the great Emperor of Kanem-Borno, Idris Aluma.
A well-known legend within the Kanuri community has it that the ethnic group came from Yemen to settle in Borno, northeast Nigeria. One group was based in Puka. It was this group that fragmented into smaller groups and resettled in Yoruba land. Another group proceeded towards Cameroon during the era of Shetima Demshe and settled around Sanda Wajiri before moving to permanently occupy Kolofata and neighboring villages under the reign of Shiramusa. The Kanuri clans, as known today, are all descendants from the lineage of Kanem.
Before the Boko Haram crisis in Amshidi, the Kanuri lived in peace. In Amshidi, there are many ethnic groups. We have notably the Hausa, the Margay, Arab Shua, and even Pearl. Before the Boko Haram crisis in the extreme north, they existed quite convivial and fraternal relationships between the Kanuri and other communities. When the crisis escalated in 2013, people immediately started pointing accusing fingers at the Kanuri. Why? Because, as you know, the Boko Haram movement was born in the state of Borno, precisely in the city of Maiduguri, where a strong Kanuri community is found. Therefore, as people struggle to unravel this historical phenomenon in the extreme north of Cameroon or frontier localities, all the way from Mora to Kuseri, where there are many Kanuri villages, people immediately thought that the Kanuri were the same persons causing terror in Cameroon.
I am called Kori Mudu. When the Boko Haram conflict broke out, we were forced to flee our villages to resettle in the cities for 4 years. During these 4 years, we suffered so much to the point that we have chosen to return to our homes and face the difficulties. However, it should be stated that the war was not caused by the Kanuri because we can find all ethnic groups within the Boko Haram sect. Every time we find ourselves in the cities, we are labeled as those who started the trouble.
I am called Kube, and it's been 5 years since we were chased away from Amshidi. We are refugees in Mora, and since being here, we have many problems, such as lack of access to potable water. We have also difficulties settling down in a neighborhood. We are regularly being chased from the house. I have a wife and 9 children, 5 of whom are those of my brother who was assassinated by Boko Haram. To make ends meet, I work as a motorbike taxi driver, but people see me as Boko Haram and do not solicit my services. When our children have problems with other children in the neighborhood, we are not even listened to, since they consider us to be Boko Haram.
The population here do not see us as human beings. In everything, we experience some sort of discrimination due to our Kanuri origin. Notwithstanding, the quarter head listens to us. He is the only one who consoles us and encourages us to be patient whenever we have problems with the local population. Since we arrived Mora, we have been suffering. Even to have water, our children have to fight because the locals seized our containers, saying the containers belong to them.
I'm called Ali, and my father was called Maina, and my mother Kaltum. Today, I'm 74 years old. My grandparents were all born in Kolofata, Gidi. We do not know neighboring Nigeria because we were all born here, and my parents all died on Cameroonian territory. When they talk of Boko Haram today, we know nothing of it. People tend to think Boko Haram is a Kanuri affair. This is rather false. There are many ethnic groups within Boko Haram. We can find the Gamegu, Kanuri, Kidi, Arab Shua, Pearl, all these persons. At first, the security forces that arrived here thought Boko Haram were the Kanuri from here. Meanwhile, it is a situation that has come and met us. Once security forces came to understand that it was not what they thought, we started working with them to fight Boko Haram. When Boko Haram comes, it's to steal our foodstuff, commit abuses, and return to Nigeria. I reiterate once more that in this group, we find everyone, because when they come, they speak every language. They only come in the night. Today, we continue to live here, thanks to the security forces. The entire population has deserted the village out of fear. But once a Kanuri finds himself in Marwa, Mora, and other towns, they are equated to Boko Haram, which is unjust. Certainly, some people have joined Boko Haram and have left the village. But it should be said that our children have gone to school and are working with the government of Cameroon. My own very son works in Balmayo.
I am called Falmata. I'm the daughter of Guni Ali. I'm from Amchide, and I ran away from there because of Boko Haram abuses. Since we arrived Marua, nobody wants to have anything to do with us, and everyone refers to us in the neighborhood as Boko Haram. When we came here, we had nothing at all, not even a pot to cook. We have moved all over Marua because whenever it was found out that we were Kanuri, the next thing that followed was eviction from the house. We have been to Doualare, Dosungo, and Logeo. As we were not allowed to settle, we had to move to Garua. In Bibemire, it was the same treatment. Then we went to Pumpumre, and later on to the neighborhood behind CPDM, and yet we received the same treatment. Finally, we were obliged to return to Marua. Since we returned, it is the same, Boko Haram, Kaka, but we hope God will restore all this one day.
During their displacement, Kanuri experienced discrimination based on their facial appearance. Police officers and gendarmes on the highways stigmatized the Kanuri because of their names, because of their morphology. That's one. Secondly, communities receiving internally displaced Kanuri fleeing Boko Haram. For example, Kanuri moving from the Mayu Sava to seek refuge in the Mayu Tanaga, where there are many internally displaced persons. Very often, they were refused access to housing and land for farming. There are also another category of persons, such as traditional rulers. The traditional rulers, with the complicity of their indigents, refused to grant access to land, as I have just stated. In the public services, like in health, Kanuri women were seen being refused access to food nutrients for the treatment of their children simply because they are believed to be Boko Haram associates. They are services, for example, documentation for the establishment of birth certificates and national identification cards. There too, we have had testimonies from persons who say they have been refused access.
There are over 247,725 internally displaced persons, according to the United Nations, essentially Kanuri, displaced as the result of the abuses and destruction of Boko Haram. After this massive exodus, many Kanuri have taken refuge in many towns in north of Cameroon. The resettlement in receiving towns has, however, been very difficult. Thanks to their roots in Borno, popular opinion has constructed an imaginary perception of the Kanuri as partners of Boko Haram.
Actually, not everyone in the neighborhood welcomed them because there were people telling us, accusing us, asking us why we had brought these people to the neighborhood, that they could cause us problems, especially as the majority of them were youths. They would gather here sometimes, and this really caused us problems with the neighbors. As concerns the practice of Muslim religion, in those zones, there are people who are scared, who no longer go to the same mosque as the Kanuri because they fear it can explode at any time.
I have neighbors who are internally displaced Kanuri. They have really had a difficult time trying to adapt in the neighborhood because they were scared that the population, other neighbors who were not aware of the fact that internally displaced persons were victims of the insecurity, would say they were terrorists. Therefore, we tried from time to time in the neighborhood or in shops. When I hear people saying this, I try to reassure them and let them know that the Kanuri are rather victims.
He is a believer in the Muslim religion, and once he masters his Quran, once he believes in something, the Kanuri has the tendency to oblige others to accept what they believe in, and people tend to relate this to being vicious. My Kanuri neighbors here, because behind my home there are many families who also came to seek for refuge, were persons who were also worried about their security, even if there was a peculiar way in which they were regarded by others. It is important to note that not everyone is bad.
How are the Kanuri who have been displaced from their localities of origin faring? The prejudices and cliches that have been developed towards them in many communities because of their misconceptions about the true position of this ethnic group has created, in our opinion, what we will call auto-stigmatization with ravaging consequences with regards to the social integration of this ethnic group.
At some point, some Kanuri even started hiding their identity in order not to be recognized in the community, to avoid the effects of stigmatization and discrimination. At the individual level, the stigmatized feels stifled. It stifles one's resourcefulness, one's ingenuity, and at the level of society, this can push an individual to become hostile towards the society, and this is where it can create violent extremism.
Faced with all these difficulties, what are the actions taken up by the Kanuri on one hand and the government authorities on the other hand to combat the stigmatization and the negative consequences?
When the crisis escalated, you will agree with me that it was difficult for the Kanuri to express themselves because it's something no one prepared for. It overwhelmed even the Kanuri. It was an unexpected crisis that came up and met them right in their homes. Concerning the internally displaced, notably the victims of Boko Haram, we were solicited or instructed by hierarchy to take all the necessary measures to ensure their integration at the local level. We have had meetings with traditional authorities, religious leaders, and opinion leaders for them to sensitize the population in order to permit them to have access easily to lodging in particular, and even income-generating activities, small businesses, small parcels of farmland which can permit them to survive.
Besides these actions taken by the authorities, the Voices for Peace project, an initiative which aims to reinforce the resilience of communities in the fight against violent extremism, has proposed some solutions.
Equal access came along with the project Voices for Peace, ACAC, which is the Cultural Association of the Kanuri of Cameroon, seized the opportunity to put up the first acts of defense, of reflection with regard to this issue of stigmatization. Thus, in March 2019, here in Marwa, was held the first meeting that brought together all the Kanuri in the region, and discussion started on this issue of discrimination. It was the first time that the Kanuri could come together massively without drawing the attention of others, and the topic could now be discussed in public. This permitted everyone to understand the fact that the Kanuri are not necessarily associated to Boko Haram, but rather that the Kanuri are themselves victims, just like other communities. During this dialogue, it was made known to all that within the Boko Haram movement, there are Hausa, Mandara, the Mafa, and all the other groups that we can find in the movement. Equally, there are other communities that feel marginalized, though not as much, such as the Mandara, and this therefore created some sort of solidarity and defense against all the stigmatization. Since this exchange with the authorities and other communities took place, gradually, everyone has started to understand that the Kanuri are victims too of the Boko Haram crisis, just like other communities. Gradually, the stigmatization is reducing, and thanks to this project, Voices for Peace, much as I have stated, has been achieved. First of all, there has been dialogue between the Kanuri themselves, whom before could not come together to discuss about their future or issues concerning them. Also, there has been dialogue between the Kanuri and other communities, the Kanuri and the authorities, and this has permitted everyone to understand the issues at hand. Equally, ACAC has had the opportunity to wake up. The Kanuri, through ACAC, have undertaken the commitment, the determination to fight against the discrimination. Actually, these are concrete results of the project. At the moment, the authorities, as well as many others, have understood the need to consider the Kanuri just like other communities in Cameroon. We took part in a workshop organized by Voices for Peace, Equal Access. It is a commendable initiative, an initiative which has permitted us to take a message to the population, to those who were suspicious of this ethnic group, to accept them. That is why we have taken part in these meetings in order to be able to evaluate, and we are reassured that things are moving in the right direction.
The Voices for Peace project has accompanied ACAC to organize 20 dialogue meetings and advocacy campaigns across Cameroon, in which 1,532 Kanuri participated, a campaign which resulted in the Marwa Declaration, a historic declaration calling on authorities, security forces, and all Cameroonians to end the stigmatization against the Kanuri and other communities.
Every Kanuri is not Boko Haram. If they seek refuge in a locality, it is to find peace, and the persons to whom they come have to accept them and love them so they could live in perfect harmony.
It is really out of error that the Kanuri are being associated with the Boko Haram terrorist sect. In any case, I understand the preoccupation, the position of others, for the simple reason that the movement was born in the state of Borno, which is predominantly Kanuri, at over 80%. However, I am not even sure that the founder of this movement is a Kanuri. I only hear of his name, a certain Yusuf, but I don't know if he is Kanuri, because the state of Borno, just like many other states in Nigeria, is cosmopolitan, where you find many ethnic components. There, you have the Kanuri, the Mandara, Gamegu, the Maji, the Pearl. All these groups are found in Borno State.
Kolofata, Ashigasha, and Amshide have almost completely been deserted. Between 2014 and 2019, Boko Haram regularly carried out deadly attacks in those localities, thanks to the military response of the elite corps of Cameroon Army and the ever-present multinational joint task force. The population that have chosen to stay are developing various forms of resilience in order to survive.
I think to re-establish confidence, there are efforts to be made at two levels. Firstly, with regard to the Kanuri, it is to effectively demonstrate as a people that they are not in solidarity with the terrorist movement. So they absolutely have to come out and say no, no, no. It is a sect that has nothing to do with the Kanuri community. That is the first thing. Secondly, still on the part of the Kanuri, it is to collaborate, I think, with the authorities to denounce all forms of language promoting violent extremism.
Also commonly referred to as Sirata, Kole, or Borno, the Kanuri are an ethnic group with distinct characteristics. Anthropologically, we can easily recognize them from tribal marks on their faces. Kanuri women and girls have a unique hairstyle that make them stand out in a heterogeneous group. For Kanuri men, cultural traits were dominated by activities such as the production of shisha and handmade traditional costumes. Meanwhile, it is important to note that the Kanuri are very well integrated in Cameroon society and can be found in all walks of life, be it public or private.